There it is. So welcome everybody to a new event of the Cloud Native Asturias community group from the CNCF. This is the May event, and thank you everybody for coming along. Today we have great speakers, right, Angel? How are you doing?
Yeah. Hello, Marcos. I'm doing pretty good. Thanks everybody for joining, and thanks to the speakers for being with us today.
Nice. We are pretty close to the mid-season finale, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Exactly. So today we are having the May event, and in June we will have another event, and it's going to be the end of the mid-season. We will rest during July and August, and we will come back on September. It's just an announcement that we do in this occasion. So as usual, I will introduce a little bit the event, and then I will let the speakers the stage. So as you know, Cloud Native Asturias is an official community group from the Cloud Native and Community and Computer Foundation. Okay, this is an official group, and this is our motto, let's say, elevating the Asturian technological landscape through the worldwide collaboration. Of course, we have a code of conduct. Okay, you can go over there and check it out. Nothing really special, just be nice with the people, respectful, and that's more than okay, right? And we used to put, let's say, Asturias in the map. So for people that is not from the region, understand where it is in the whole world. Since today we have a speaker from within the region, I just will put the map so you can put the shape over there. Guillermo is right now in Gijón, but also we have today a speaker from London. So in case, Josh, you want to visit us, you can easily take a plane. Actually, I think we have direct plane from London to Asturias. Or if you are wireless, let's say, you can go by car or even by foot. It's going to take a while, but that's okay. So these are the possibilities so far. Of course, you can follow the conversation on social media, in this case, Twitter. These are the hashtags that we are using in this occasion. So don't hesitate to engage over there, mix and mingle, and we can follow the conversation over there. Okay, the agenda for today. So we will start with how to manage GitHub organization with Terraform. I think this is pretty cool. GitHub plus Terraform from HashiCorp. Very, very trendy and really useful, by the way. And after that, we will follow with the lean product development with SLOs. Also really important these days. Our first speaker, Guillermo. Guillermo is working in Asturias for Empathy Company. He's part of the platform engineering, and he's really enjoying the DevOps mindset, how it works, what the value that it brings. And today is here to talk about Terraform, as I mentioned before. Our second speaker, as I mentioned, coming from London, Josh is really willing to the lean product work as consultant after spending a lot of time with everything from mainframes, machine learning, and Kubernetes. And actually, just before starting the session, he was mentioning is a speaker as it is, if that exists, because he's attending a lot of events as a speaker and promoting and following the learning for everybody. So it's a pleasure to have you all both here. Thank you very much. And I think my last slide, one previous slide is you can put your questions in the Q&A, also in the chat if you want. We will gather all the questions and we will proceed with the reading at the end of each of the sessions for the speakers. And last but not least, in case you want to attend as a speaker to one of the even monthly sessions that we have, you can apply over there. You can ping us on Twitter, on LinkedIn, or just drop an email from our webpage, as usual, okay? So that's all from my side. I will stop sharing. And as the agenda was mentioning, I will let the stage to Guillermo. Guillermo, all yours.
Thank you, Marcos. I will share my screen. So let me know if my screen is visible.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, so first of all, I'm Guillermo Vigil, and as Marco said, and I'm part of the platform engineering team at Empathy. And today I don't have any slide. I just created this repository, and I'm going to hands-on lab this repo with a guide that I created. So you can find this repository under my username in GitHub. But mainly I will focus this lab or this talk with how to manage GitHub organizations with Terraform from scratch, because probably some of you are going to move or create any organization in the future. So it's very useful to have a guide to start from scratch. So first of all, I will give some context of the provider that I'm going to use. This is the GitHub provider from Terraform that we are going to use. And this Terraform provider has many resources. Here there are some resources, but we are going to use mostly in the daily tasks the GitHub team resource, the GitHub team membership resource, the GitHub team repository resource, also the repository resource itself, and the membership resource itself, because we can create with this resource users and remove it from the organization. Also, we are going to talk about the branch protection for the repositories. And I think it's much the parts I'm going to talk in this session, but there are several others, other resources. If you want to take a look, here is the documentation. So moving back to the repository, the prerequisites for starting with this guide is installing Terraform in your local machine and creating a GitHub account. And for the storing the remote state with Terraform, I created a GCP account with the Cloud CLI to perform the saving of the Terraform state in GCP. Okay, but you can do it with AWS, with an S3 bucket, or Azure, or any other remote bucket. Okay. So let's get started with these commands. I will put the guide in the left and the command line in the right. So I'm going to clone the repository and open it with the Visual Studio Code. Okay, so I'm going to open also a command line here on terminal. Okay, so first we are going to create a GCP project and a bucket in the GCP project to store the state of the Terraform there. After that, we are going to change the state, because the state is locally first, and then we are going to store it in the bucket itself. And we'll start to deploying or creating the resources from GitHub. Okay, so we're going to start with the Terraform init of the first part of the. I'm planning with billing account of the GCP account to create the bucket and the project itself. Okay, so we are going to create the project, the bucket, and a random ID for the bucket. So let's apply the changes. And after some minutes, no, let's say some seconds, no minutes, the project and the bucket are going to be created. Oh, sorry, I didn't export the billing account to the terminal. So it again. Slide. Okay, so we can check in the GCP console that GitHub project has been created, and also if I go to open it to see it, and if I go to the Cloud Storage service here, we can see the bucket. Okay, so let's move the Terraform state from local. Here we have the Terraform state locally. We are going to change it to the bucket, and the bucket is called like this one with the random ID previously created. Okay, so let's do a Terraform init to change the backend location from local to remote. Yes. Okay, so after this, if we refresh the console in the GCP, we have here the state. Okay, so let's keep with the next step. We're going to create a GitHub organization. Okay, well, let me open it in another screen. I'm going to call the organization as test.tf with my personal account. We are going to skip these steps because we are going to add the members later with Terraform. And we can submit this part. So we have created this organization manually. The provider itself doesn't have any resource to create the organization itself, so we have it to create it manually. After that, we can create a token. This token is needed to perform the actions with Terraform for GitHub. So I can call it like this, and I'm going to select all the scopes for this demo. After this doc, I will remove this token, but for now we can create it with full permissions to avoid problems. Okay, so I will copy the token and I'm going to export it here as GitHub first the org, and after that with value that I copied from here. Okay, so let's continue. Okay. After that, we can create, or we can first remove the state from local, because the state is already located in the GCP console in the GCS bucket. Okay, and we can create first of all teams for our GitHub organization. So let's go to the teams, and here we are going to use a module for creating the team. The module is very simple. This is the simplest module that we prepared for this session. It's just a resource to creating the GitHub team. Okay, so let's perform. Oh, I forgot to also change here. Not in the module, in the main TF for here, the bucket to store the state is this one. Okay, let's run the Terraform init command to initialize the backend and download the providers. So we can run right now a plan, and in this case, I'm going to share with the plan the GitHub token and the GitHub organization name. So in this case, it's going to create 4 different teams: a front team, a back team, admins team, and everyone team. Everyone team is going to be for any member of the organization, and the rest of the teams are going to be for different purposes. So we can.
Is it? I think we lost Guillermo. Let's wait a little bit just in case he just appears suddenly. But actually, Angel, I was thinking, this is Guillermo is speaking, and you usually are waiting. You are waiting for slides, a PowerPoint or whatever.
Yeah.
And for me, it was really cool that he just started with the code. Okay, let's go to Terraform init, pam pam pam. So we are doing a live demo.
Yep, I think he's back.
Guillermo?
Let's give him a couple of seconds and see if he could.
It looks like
He's still sharing, but I don't know if he dropped.
But he's not
on the call.
He's not in the list anymore, I think, of people.
But definitely he's still sharing. So.
Oh no, we cannot hear you.
Can't hear you. Maybe give me a sec. Let's make you. Oh, you're still a presenter.
If you are sharing, actually, you are mute, I think. Or what? It's not working, your platform. Okay, I see. So maybe, try to leave and try to rejoin. In the meantime, there you are. We can talk about a little bit.
Let's give him a couple of seconds and see.
Hello, can you
There
hear
you
me?
are.
Yeah,
There you are.
we can hear you now.
Oh, thank you. I don't know what happened.
Don't worry, these kind of things happen time to time, so that's okay.
Okay, let's
the God demo.
Again, the screen.
There you are.
Okay, are you seeing my screen, right?
Yeah.
Yes, it did.
Perfect.
Okay. It seems I lost my connection because, in fact, the last Terraform command didn't work also. I don't know if, okay, there is something missing here. Okay, there are the 4 teams created, but there is an error. I don't know why. Anyway, we can continue with the rest of the resources. So let's create now the admins. In this case, the admins are going to be myself in this case. And I'm going to be part also of the back team, okay, that we created before. So let's go to the admins folder. Oh, okay. I was creating, let me come back to the teams. Because I think I was creating but with the Terraform apply. I was in the folder, I think. No, maybe I was there. Okay. There is a problem. I don't know why. The teams are created anyway. So let's keep working on the admins. And let's do Terraform init.
It's okay. Maybe you can explain while you try to do it, like what are the steps that you were planning to do, even if they don't work, so that we have an idea of where you're heading to, and perhaps it also gives you a few seconds to rerun the commands. And if it doesn't work, you can always voice over them and explain what is the actual outcome that you expect to have if it doesn't work. Demos are like that, right? This is the risk,
Yes, no,
but only the people who take the risk will.
I think
no problem if it doesn't. If you have an issue that you cannot resolve right now.
I think I just found the error. I created the Terraform folder, so everything seems to be working again.
Okay, perfect.
So I'm just creating the admin for me, for myself, and be the admin of their organization. And I'm going to be part of the everyone's team, and also the admins team and the back team. Okay, so if I apply changes. I refresh the teams. Here, I'm part of these 3 teams right now, okay? So we can continue with the next. We can create then a repository, okay? So we are going to use another module, and in this case, it's under repos. And we're going to create this exactly the same repository in the new organization. So we are going to move the repository to the new organization, and we are going to create where we are going to push these changes to the organization with the new repository. So we are going to change also here the backend packet for the state and initialize again. We are splitting the states in some different folders. We can do the same in the same state or in the same file, but I prefer to split it because the organization is going to be bigger and bigger, so it's best to have it's better to have the state split in some several states. Okay, so we can plan, and we are going to create, in this case, a repository, an empty repository with this name and this description, and it's going to be private. So we can apply again the changes. And if we go to the organization and repositories, here is the repository. Okay. So right now, I'm going to perform some actions to push the code between this origin remote to the new one, the new repository that we created. So we are going to do this exactly, these changes. Well, one by one, because I need to change the organization name here, in this case, for the organization that we created before. Okay. And now we are going to push the changes to the new repository. Okay, so the new repository has now the changes that we have had in the other repository using the same repository. Okay, so right now we can create also some users. We can add, for example, my teammate Ramiro. So let's go to the users folder. And here we are going to add Ramiro. His name, his username in GitHub is Casco. Okay, so let's change first here and from Terraform init. Terraform plan. Apply. So as we can see in the plan, Ramiro is going to be a member and is going to be member also of the everyone's team and also of the front team. We can check here. He's going to be member of the front team. Okay. So if we go to the organization again, and let's go back here to the organization, put folder and go to people. Ramiro is here as pending invitation. So when he accepts the invitation, he is going to be in the organization and also in the front team. We can continue also to creating a branch protection. Okay, so let's go to repos again, and in this case for the front, we're going to create a new front repository. Let's change also the packet and perform again a Terraform init. For this repository, we have the name of front JavaScript UI, and the branches are going to be protected. In this case, is the main branch, and at least two reviewers needed to perform any change on the main branch. So we are planning the changes and applying. Okay, so let's check the repositories in the organization. Here is a new repository, and if we check the branch protections, the branch protection is created here, and at least two reviewers needed to be merging the pull request to perform the changes in the main branch. Okay, so finally, I'm going to talk a little bit of the bonus track, the CI/CD part of this Terraform code, because we are performing the changes here locally. Even the state is remotely located in the bucket, but we can provide some integration with continuous integration and continuous deployment with Atlantis, for example, or Terraform Cloud and GitHub Actions. In Empathy, we are using Atlantis. We deployed Atlantis in Kubernetes, and we are using Atlantis with Terraform pull request automation for Bitbucket and GitHub. I can show you very briefly when I finish with the presentation. If I go to Empathy Core organization, and I'm going to edit our repository from GitHub. One of the repos, for example, for the docs team, for example, I'm going to edit the repos.tf file, and I'm going to add here very quickly a new repository. So the repository is going to be test, for example, test empathy, and test for empathy. Cool. Okay. So I'm going to create, yes, the new branch, and I'm going to create the pull request, and Atlantis is going to perform the plan, the init, the plan, and show us the plan during the pull request. In this case, the plan fails because the module is duplicated. But if everything goes well, we can comment here Atlantis apply those changes without manual intervention in the terminal. And our Atlantis after that is going to merge the pull request into the branch. And I think it's everything. I don't have any more time, I think.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Guillermo. I think it was a great presentation. Thank you very much. Angel, I don't know if you have any question around.
Yes, so sorry for the problems in the
demo.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it was very brave to do a live demo in a short amount of time that we had. So yeah, thank you for that. I think there is a question from Esteban. Nice talk, Guillermo. How about creating repos from GitHub templates?
Yes, in Empathy, we have also creating a module for templates. I can show you the module here. And in fact, the human resource team can create modules. Well, I can create repositories from this module using the templates for getting new candidates in account for new hires. So we can create the repositories from the template itself. And it's easier to them to create without any intervention from us. They can create any repositories for the hires as they want. So we can, in fact, I can share this module also in the repository that I created. I didn't create it for the demo because I thought it was easier to understand, but I can add it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. I don't see. Yeah, there is another question from Alberto. I guess it is possible to do similarly with Bitbucket organizations, right?
Yes. As GitHub provider, there are another providers like Bitbucket. I didn't try it, but I think you can. Where is the? I'm not sharing, right?
You are not sharing.
Okay, let me share very briefly. Yep. So you can browse the any providers here, and I think there is another one for Bitbucket. I don't know if there is any official provider from Bitbucket or there.
Yep.
I don't know if yes. I think you can use this provider to create any other repository or well, the resources that they have for this provider to create resources in Bitbucket also. So yes, you can.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? I don't see any other questions, so I think we're pretty good here. Thank you very much, Guillermo.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Also, thank you very much, Guillermo, and thank you for all the questions. In case you have more questions, just drop it in the chat, okay? And Guillermo will be around, I guess, for a while to answer. If not, it can stay over there, okay? Actually, I have several questions. Maybe I can catch up later because I'm very curious about this topic. Again, thank you very much, Guillermo. And now we can let the stage to Josh. Josh, all yours.
Thank you. All right. Now that was interesting because yeah, we the client I'm at currently, we make really heavy use of the GitHub Terraform provider for managing. Like I think last time I checked, I think we've got 500 users in GitHub. That's the only way you can manage that, right? So it's really good and really helpful to see more people getting involved with that because there really is no other way of doing it. All right, so my talk is a bit of buzzword bingo, unfortunately, because I have lean, product delivery, and SLOs all in the title, so you'll have to bear with me on that one. But effectively, this was based on what I did at the client and kind of pulled these three things together to try and drive a really good outcome. And I won't have time to do the demo that goes with this, but there is a GitHub repo with kind of like a demo you can do in your own time to kind of prove this out, which is based on Terraform, as it so happens. So with today, there's kind of 3 key takeaways that I hope people can get from this. The first is that eliminating waste drives better outcomes, and that very much comes from Lean, but we'll kind of talk through waste and a particular kind of waste that you have in processes. The second is that implicit expectations exist. And again, these will make a little bit more sense once we get to the end. And the third is that SLOs and service level objectives, I probably should have said that. I do go into a bit more detail on what they are. What the power of them in a lot of ways is they convert these implicit expectations into concrete outcomes that you can track and measure. Because the unfortunate thing about building things is everyone thinks that it will do something. And if you let that live only in people's heads, it generally blows up in your face. So I have to very quickly doing obligatory about myself slide. So I am the AWS practice lead at Contino. Contino are a digital transformation consultancy that work with enterprises in EMEA, in APAC, and in America. I'm a lean junkie. I have this problem where I use lean theory for almost everything nowadays, and I'm a AWS APN ambassador and a HashiCorp ambassador, which generally means I run my mouth at a lot of places and conferences and meetups and stuff like that. So if you're interested or you like listening to me speak for some weird reason, there is plenty more of me to be found around the place. What I'm going to specifically talk about today, based on the story and what I did with the client, is talking about AWS landing zones. Now, sometimes people think AWS landing zones are a bit of a weird example to pick for SLOs. And this is just generally one of the things with SLOs is where they came from was Google and, high frequency, high traffic environments and services. And often when you talk about things which are low frequency, and I'll kind of get into exactly how low frequency some landing zone pieces can be, that I still think they're really powerful to talk about and measure and have these kind of as a tool in your toolbox. And with a landing zone, just in case people aren't overly familiar, so the landing zone is effectively how you set up your cloud estate to scale. So if you're at an enterprise and you're operating at hundreds of teams trying to work in a cloud estate, this is how you set everything up so you can actually have the guardrails in place, have the governance in place, and kind of grow that out. And one of the core things in here is account vending. And that's kind of, again, the example we're going to kind of narrow down on for this talk. And this is account vending in AWS parlance. It's project vending in GCP parlance and subscription vending in Azure. So there's kind of analogies here. This isn't that AWS specific at all, right? I'm using AWS as an example, but this is not something that is specific to AWS. And normally when you're building out any kind of product, right, or doing anything, you end up with user stories. And, they classically look kind of this form. Like as a development team, I want to be able to provision AWS accounts so I can deploy my application. I think everyone will have seen user stories that look maybe not exactly this specifically, but that as a I want so I can formula. And I hope people don't take away from this talk that user stories are bad. They're not. They're good, but they're not enough generally. And we'll kind of dive into that a little bit more as we go along. So as I said, I'm a bit of a lean junkie. Lean, for those who aren't familiar with it, came out of the Toyota production system out of Japan in the mid-20th century. Once it got to the Western world, it got rebranded as Lean. And it's a whole kind of management process theory thing that is quite vast. One of the things it talks about is about waste. And it calls out that there are 8 kinds of waste that you can have in a process. A little tidbit kind of on the side is that Toyota have been going down this process for 50, 60, 70 years. They reckon when they make cars that still only 1/3 of the time is actually delivering value. And in their process, 2/3 of the time as waste. What they reckon currently for software is that we are 1% value and 99% waste, which is either depressing or exciting, depending on the way you like to look at it. It means there's a lot of room for improvement, but maybe that we're not quite as good as we think we are. And one of the things that Lean does as well is it always talks about work in progress. If you can have less work in progress, everything gets better. And on that kind of note, we're just going to talk about one of these kinds of waste. And if people are interested, I can link books on this. They can go into this in a lot more detail. But where I found SLOs really impactful is talking to the waste of extra processing, which is the waste from producing higher quality products than you actually require. There is a certain level of quality you need to hit, and after that, it's diminishing returns. So that's what we're kind of going to dive into a little bit here. When we start talking about quality, if we go back to the user story really doesn't talk to quality at all. It doesn't talk to a lot of things. It just expresses an intent for something to happen. Now, given this user story, I can implement this thousands upon thousands of different ways. I can fully engineer this to the point where it is as good as it could possibly be. I can do this by clicking through a console. I can do this probably with carrier pigeons if I really wanted, but that doesn't make a lot of sense. And one of the things that is missing from user stories is we can't answer certain questions. And one of those key questions is, what is good enough? When I'm talking about provisioning accounts, what's good enough? How do I actually measure that? What does that actually mean? And even before you can answer that question, you kind of have to answer who defines good enough, who gets to decide how good we have to be able to do this, how quickly, with what level of success do we need to be able to do this? And then it comes back to kind of one of the things about product management, that really product management at kind of a high level is all about managing tension. And there are many different kinds of tension in that, from the product owner to the delivery team, to the scrum master. Sorry, to security, to risk, to governance, to the business, everything else. There's all these different kinds of tension. The product owner role is all about managing all those kinds of tension. And again, on that kind of theme of this talk, we're only going to talk about one kind of tension because we're trying to limit the work in progress here. And really, this is the tension between delivery and consumers. Consumers are effectively supply and demand, if you think about it in that term. So the tension that exists between the people who are consuming your service, so the people who are having accounts vended for them, versus the delivery team. And this is kind of where we start to get back into SLOs and the two other ones that go alongside in terms of SLIs and SLAs. Now, I am going to define these because my years of consulting in enterprises tells me that definitions change, they morph, they have problems. So SLI, or a service level indicator, defines success and failure. It is something that is measurable, that tells you whether you were successful or you failed. And failure is not necessarily a bad thing, and I'll go into that in a little bit more detail as well. What an SLO does is it defines an acceptable failure frequency. So for every 1,000 times, how many times could I fail and that actually be okay? That actually be built in, and the teams that are consuming whatever I'm building have signed up to that. And where SLAs come in is that where you have a defined, often contractual penalty if you exceed the failure goal. So if you break too often, then there's some penalty there. So the classic ones with cloud providers where they have SLAs is they, give you credits back for the cost of that service if they drop below a particular SLA. Now, generally, if you're building internal services, which I was in this case, you're not going to have contractual SLAs within a business. That is probably not going to happen. But generally, if you're doing external stuff, if you're working for a SaaS provider or something, you'll have these contractual penalties in place. And where this kind of comes in is, in order to have an SLA, you need to have an SLO. And in order to have an SLO, you need to have an SLI. And one of the anti-patterns I generally see out there in the wild is people say, oh, we have SLAs. They're written in Confluence or your documentation, maybe SharePoint. I don't know. They're written down somewhere. But really, that's the only place they exist is on paper. And generally, I've started to call those Schrodinger's SLAs. If you can't measure whether you're hitting it or not, it's not really delivering a lot of value at that point. If all it does is exist on a page and it's not part of conversation, it's not measurable, then you have a real problem and you've got wasted effort. And this is generally people saying they're doing SRE when they're not. And sometimes you've just got to find that out, ask the hard questions and start to challenge and actually take them on the journey over to actually doing SRE. So when we come back to the user story, so we need to have an SLI here. We can't have an SLO without an SLI. So when we're provisioning accounts, what defines success and failure for an account provisioning? And generally, you're looking at time-bound things here. So imagine you go and talk to your consuming teams and you ask them, if we were to provision accounts, how soon do you want to have to wait from asking for it to getting it? And that they'll naturally, because, they're that way inclined, that they'll come back with something ridiculous. Like, from requesting an account, we want it within 5 minutes. Now, when you think about that, if you think about from the delivery team side, that is quite an imposition on you. The amount of engineering that has to go into that, and the amount of time and maintenance and people looking at it and all that kind of stuff, that's unrealistic, right? So you will go, no, not 5 minutes. How about a week? And, naturally they'll go, a week's kind of a long time to wait, really, in the scheme of things. If I now have to start expecting things to happen if I have to wait a week for an account, that starts to impact my delivery as a consumer. So, you don't want to have it so all these teams are bottlenecked around your process. So instead, you end up coming to something of a happy medium, which is, in this case with this client, it was 1 business day. That was the agreement that we came to with the consuming teams, that from you requesting an account, you'll have it within a day. If they can't plan around 1 day in advance, they have massive problems. And also the engineering and the process and everything else that has to go around this to hit a day is not too arduous for us. Incidentally, the numbers are, this is 5 times quicker than the counter, but it's 100 times slower than the initial ask. Okay, so we have an SLI here, but SLIs in and of themselves are still not giving us everything. We've defined success and failure, but as a delivery team, you want to be able to allow for failure, right? You don't want to always be succeeding. So we need to take that next step up to an SLO. And when you look at kind of defining goals and that kind of stuff, a really common model that's used are SMART goals, and effectively outlines that they should be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-boxed. Cool. I would argue that an SLI gives us 4 of those. It's specific, it's measurable, it's relevant, and it's time-boxed. Like we've added, from that user story, we have actually added that time box aspect and made it measurable. But what about attainable? Now, hopefully everyone is aware that the pursuit of 100% success is toxic and is actually bad for the business. If you can never fail, you can never learn, and that starts to have real problems for the business. So this is where the SLO step comes in, and you're trying to go, well, how frequently can we fail? How often do we need to succeed? And often what happens, or at least in my experience, is that because people work with AWS and GCP and Azure, they get very used to SLOs and SLAs being measured in amount of nines. 3, 4, 5 nines is quite common, right? So generally they'll look at and they'll go an SLO and their first instinct is to slap nines on it. So you'll end up with being, okay, so over a rolling 30-day window, we'll get accounts vended within 1 business day 99% of the time. So is that actually reasonable? Is that realistic? But let's actually run some numbers here and realize what is. So let's say on a month, we want to be able to fail a couple of times. Like we have other priorities, failing a couple of times. If we're allowed to fail twice in the 30-day window, but we still want to hit like 99%, that means we have to vend 200 accounts a month consistently to be able to do this. I don't know of a business on earth that vends 200 accounts a month consistently. From talking to AWS, like they have clients that are in the thousands, like 1 to 2,000, but it took them years, like 5-10 years to get there, right? So this is not really reasonable. So instead, let's kind of take it the other way. Okay, what do we realistically expect? How many accounts do we realistically expect to vend every 30 days? Now, that ends up being about 20 working days, 1 every other day. That starts to feel a bit more reasonable. And based on my experience working with some clients, that's a fairly reasonable thing to base it around, 1 every other day. And what that gives us is every 30 days, 10 accounts with 2 failures. Our SLO is 80%. And that is something that is reasonable from the delivery side. That's something that we should feel fairly comfortable committing to. So now we end up with an SLO. The account vending happens within 1 business day, 80% of the time of a rolling 30-day window. Awesome. Now we have that room to fail and room to prioritize as we need to. But now all our consuming teams have a concrete expectation on what they should get. 80% of the time, they should get an account within 1 day. If you need to, you can go 90% of the time, you'll get it within 2 and all that kind of stuff. But generally, just getting to this point really starts to change conversations. And when it comes down to it, and the rule of thumb kind of in the space is that every extra 9 you want, going from 2 to 3 nines or 3 to 4, is 10 times harder than making the jump before. So what this comes down to is that your team capacity is limited. Like you only have so many hours in the week, you only have so many people on the team. When it comes to the delivery team trying to negotiate these, and I'm probably going to try and speed up a little bit because I'm realizing I'm starting to run, is that less is more, really. The less we commit to as a team, the wider we can do, right? So if someone comes to us going, we want 99% for account vents in 5 minutes, it's like, okay, yeah, we can do that. You ain't getting anything else out of us at that point, right? Like we can't do that and do everything. So this is all about having these negotiations to go, the more you want, the less you get on everything, but actually making that concrete and something that they can feel and that consumers can feel. So then when they're asking for the moon, you're like, okay, well, if you get that, you don't get anything else with it, right? And when it comes to giving it to engineers, like, which would you rather give to your engineers? Would you rather give them the user story or the SLO? As a software developer myself, I'd much rather have the one on the right. I can think about what do I need to do? What's the minimal amount of effort? Because developers are generally quite lazy people and they're always trying to find the quickest way. What's the minimum amount of effort I need to put in to hit the one on the right? On the one on the left, I could build anything I want and suffice that in so many different ways, but really adding these measures to it really changes it. And, at this point, I haven't really spoken to the whole aspect of making it so it's not Schrodinger's SLA, right? How do you make it so these don't just exist on paper? How do you actually change it and have these as part of a feedback loop within the team? And really, you can't debug a system with a dashboard, but, for these kind of things, dashboarding is pretty wonderful. And, I have a repository at the end, which kind of sets up a one on AWS for specifically doing account vending. And from deciding this was the way we wanted to go to building out a dashboard that was working took 2 or 3 days. And then once you have this so it can be seen, you can build it into your process. So into your stand-ups, into your sprint reviews. I don't know how you work, but there should be a spot, in a regular spot where you can review how the product is operating, where we have problems and where we have strengths. And now when you're having conversations within the team about priorities, you can have discussions based on data, not always on anecdotes and feeling. And if you kind of go through these, as they speak to certain actions to take. So take account vending. We're at 95%, the SLO is 80. So is there something that we hate and that we want to do a big refactor? We can afford to have some failures now because we're overachieving. So new features is it's a great time to put new features into account vending if we want to, because our end user, even if we break a couple of times, we've got the space there, we've got the budget to do that. Or you go, okay, we're going to shift focus away off account vending because it's already operating better than we need it to. So we're going to focus on other things. One of the things that happens with these is you need to be wary of inflating expectations on these. If you never fail, people will start to expect that. Even if you've put like, we'll do 80%, if you're constantly at 100 for 6 months, people's expectations will naturally start to tend upwards. So you actually want to fail occasionally to remind them of the fact that things can fail and make it so they're aware of the fact that they're not always going to get it. It's not always going to be up. The system is not always going to be alive, and they need to be ready for that. So if we go to access provisioning, in this one, we've only got that 2% error budget. We're only slightly over where we need to be. So this is kind of the times where you want to be investing in stability, paying down debt, and building that budget up. So then when you add new features and new features do introduce risk, that you're fine. And you're not going to have people banging down the door because you're now not hitting their level of expectation. And kind of the third one is if you're massively underperforming, your team should be mobbing around this. You should be investing heavily into getting this up and getting this more stable and getting it to where you need to be, or going, actually, our SLO is way too high. Priorities have changed. We don't actually want that old SLO. We want to lower the SLO, but then you can communicate that out and go back through the conversations again and walk it through. So please don't read this slide. It's just there for an example, but these are just random examples of different SLIs and SLOs for different things in a landing zone. The reason I put this here is because everyone on the call, I expect if they were to actually read this, and again, please don't, there would be something on here that you would disagree with. You were like, from your context, where you work, something here is too high, too low, the definition of failure or success isn't right. But that's kind of the point. By putting it out there and making it part of the conversation, you have the conversation in the first place, as opposed to it being this implicit thing which never gets talked about. So there is a GitHub repo to go on this that actually is a rebuild of the same dashboarding that I built for the client that runs fully on AWS with Terraform. It takes all of 5 minutes to run through, but you can get an idea of how quickly and easily you can build this out. So with that, I'm just going to finish on going over the 3 takeaways again. So the first is eliminating waste drives better outcomes. As I said, we only kind of covered off one kind of waste. There are 7 more. Being able to see the world through that lens is really impactful when you're looking at process. You're looking at how you're doing things and going, well, we'll deliver more value if we stop doing things which are inherently wasteful. The second is that implicit expectations exist. Hopefully when I said about account vending, you had some kind of idea of somewhere you've been and the expectation, if I need a new AWS account, how long, or equivalent, how long is that going to take? I would expect that expectation that's in your head was based on experience, but never written down anywhere and was never part of a conversation. And the third is hopefully you've now seen that by going through the journey on SRE and going through SLOs, that you can take those things that exist in people's heads and make them something that everyone can agree on and go around. And the fact that now you're actually giving more information to your engineers that when they're building things, they know how good the thing is that they have to build. So now when they're working on this, they don't spend 4 weeks building something that's gold-plated to the nth degree that really doesn't add much more value than where they were at day 3. So it's just really impactful and driving the right kind of conversations. And especially when you're in a high-pressure team trying to do many things, this allows you to kind of talk to your consumers and go, you can't have everything. You need to pick and choose what you want, and we need to decide what we want to do. And this is a really good way of doing that. And that's all I had. I know I'm already overrunning by a couple of minutes. So.
No, that's okay. It's really good. You can overrun. I think it was a very. I think you have me definitely engaged on the talk, because I definitely suffer that, and this actually comes like very timely, I would say, in my case. So thanks for that. I don't know if there are any questions. At the moment, I don't see any, but I might have one in the meantime while people think about it. How would you describe what would be, if someone decides to go for this approach, what is the biggest challenge that you foresee, like defining those SLOs, like just from your experience, right? You've done this a bunch of times.
Yeah, I think the hard part was getting people to be realistic about it, and also picking of all the things, because normally you've already got the system in place, and picking the core user stories and deciding on which ones you want to start tracking first. Because sometimes people have their pet features that they like, and they're like, oh, but I want to measure this. It's like, well, what are the core things we really exist, and what's kind of the periphery of things that we do? And just driving to that, which is why like account vending was the first one we did, because that underlies everything else that we do. If we can't do that, everything else we're trying to do is pretty much irrelevant. So building that out over time can be the challenge. But normally the team is suffering pain, so I've found it quite an easy thing to sell, because normally they're like, yeah, we're already suffering from this. This might be a way out. Cool, we'll give it a go. But it is something like you can always go like, we'll try it for 2 weeks and see how we go. As I said, you can build kind of out the core for the dashboarding and stuff, I don't know, a couple of days, and then try it, and then just go, we're going to try it for 2 weeks. If we don't like it, we'll stop. But at least, not going like, this is now the future for the next 3 years, right? But going like, let's try it and see how we feel. Actually going through proper agile and, learning as you go along, right?
Actually, this topic that you mentioned, Angel, and what Josh is describing is really relevant. And I could see also during your presentation, the word expectations appear several times. And for me, this is something that I having like really a key takeaway among those expectations, how to handle that, not also within your own organization offering the service, but also to the customers, to the users of your service, right?
Yeah, I think it is dangerous, because if you don't, as kind of the delivery team take ownership of defining them and driving them, you to a degree you only have yourself to blame at the end of the day if they blow up in your face. Like, I've been a consultant for years. Managing stakeholder expectation is 90% of my job. So then when doing this, it comes quite naturally. But at the end of the day, like, if you're unwilling to have the conversations with people and drive this, then you reap what you sow, to a degree, with it.
Yep.
I think we have a question.
Oh yeah, from Alberto. Any particular rule of thumb or general advice to minimize the amount of waste? I mean, if targeting an 80% of success, not provide 90, but something slightly above slightly above the 80.
Yeah. On the waste bit of just building something that's good enough, I think if you start tracking things, and as you build it out and you add features and you iterate and refactor, then you will hit that SLO benchmark and you go, okay, let's invest a little bit more to give us a little bit of a buffer there, and then stop. Let's move on to something else. So, you know, if you're in Jira with your epics or something else, right? Like if you're actively tracking this, if this is built into the new feature from the start, that you can then go, okay, cool. We're at 85. We said we were going to do 80. Let's stop working on it, and then we can come back to it. I mean, the software entropy in software is real, right? Like the number will naturally just fall over time without you, if you do not do anything to it. Because people will make little changes here and there and that kind of stuff, and you know, it just so happens, or maybe, you know, the amount of accounts that people are requesting goes way up, and now you need to build a better solution because the amount has gone up. Like the client where I'm at now, yeah, it's 10 a month roughly, but there's some new strategic project going on that it's probably going to go up to 50 a month potentially for a bit. I don't think the solution they have in place right now is good enough to hit the SLO if you go to 50, because there's still enough human aspects in there because we didn't have to build it out to the nth degree. So, you know, the numbers just help you kind of find where you are and make the right decisions. So, yeah. But if you don't track it, then engineers generally like chasing tinfoil, and they build monuments to their own intelligence, which is awesome. But at the end of the day, it's a business, so you need to provide those constraints, right?
Yep.
Cool. I don't know if there are any other questions, Angel.
I don't see any other questions.
Okay. Okay. I think we can go directly to the end of the session. So I will share my screen just to finish the topic. So here it is. There you are. Perfect then. So of course, thank you very much, both Josh and Guillermo, for your talks. I think it was great to share your knowledge and the learning that you have to offer to the people. Terraform, SLOs, actually both of them, I have it in my notes to work on that. I can tell you I have to work very hard on that. So also thank you everybody on the audience for coming along. This video will be is recorded and will be published in our YouTube video in the YouTube channel, of course. Yeah, just in case you want to catch up with us, Angel and myself, and in case some of the speakers want to join, we will be in a couple of minutes in the Twitch channel. So you will be able to join over there. Yeah, I would say that's all. Again, thank you very much to the speakers and to the attendees. And see you soon.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Thank you. Bye-bye.